In a bustling diner, the undercover owner, Walter Thompson, observed a waitress named Sarah Mitchell, her hand wrapped in bandages, adeptly managing trays with her good arm despite visible pain. Her manager, Greg, relentlessly criticized her every small mistake, his sharp words piercing through the diner's chatter. Customers murmured, some with empathy, others shocked by Greg's harshness. Unbeknownst to them, Sarah's injury stemmed from an incident linked to a darker secret Greg hid. From his corner booth, Walter sensed inconsistencies in the situation. The deeper he probed, the more troubling the truth became. Before we dive deeper, if this is your first time here, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Your support fuels our ability to share gripping stories like this one. Stay until the end, and if Sarah's story resonates, share your thoughts in the comments and pass it along to a friend. Now, let's get started. The diner carried the familiar scent of scorched coffee and sizzling bacon that lingered in the air. During the morning rush, the counter hummed with conversation, the grill hissed, and plates clinked as they stacked high. At the heart of it was Sarah, unmistakable not for drawing attention, but for working with the efficiency of three. Her hair was pulled back, her apron already marked with stains. She maneuvered hot coffee mugs in her uninjured hand, balancing plates against her hip. Her left hand, bound in bandages up to her wrist, moved stiffly, betraying a wince when her fingers grazed something unintentionally. Yet Sarah kept smiling, a shield against the pain. Behind the counter, Greg lounged by the register, a smirk on his face as he shouted orders. "Hurry up, Sarah. People aren't here for charity." His voice sliced through the noise, loud enough for customers to notice. Some glanced up, shaking their heads, whispering. At table 3, two women in suits leaned in, their voices hushed. "Look at her hand. She shouldn't be working. Greg never eases up on her. How does she endure it?" Sarah caught every word, the pity, the laughter, Greg's jabs, but she pressed on. Quitting wasn't an option. Rent and bills didn't pause for her pain. By mid-morning, sweat glistened on her neck. Her good arms strained from carrying the load alone. As she served table 6 with a quiet, "Enjoy your meal," she collided with Greg, spilling water across his shirt. The diner fell silent. Greg leaned close, his coffee-scented breath sharp. "Clumsy again? Looking for excuses, huh?" A few customers shifted, one muttering, "Give her a break." Greg ignored them, his gaze predatory, relishing control. Sarah apologized, reaching for a towel, but he yanked it away, his grin chilling. It wasn't about the spill, it was about power. And she knew why. Weeks prior, Sarah had overheard Greg boasting about pocketing cash from the register. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop. She was cleaning tables after hours when his voice carried through the office door. Initially doubting her ears, she listened closer, each word confirming his theft. When he caught her lingering in the hallway, his eyes flashed with rage. His hand had seized her wrist, twisting until it snapped, the pain forcing her to her knees. "Clumsy, huh? Keep it that way," he'd sneered. "One word, and it's more than your job you'll lose." Now, with her hand useless, she was branded incompetent. By shift's end, Sarah's body shook from exhaustion. Leaning against the back counter, she whispered a prayer no one heard. Unaware, she was being watched, not just by customers, but by someone she mistook for an ordinary patron. That gaze was about to change everything. Most customers came and went, eating their pancakes, tipping if generous, and hurrying out. But one man lingered. In his late 60s, with neatly trimmed white hair and weathered boots, he was known as the Vet for his upright posture and sharp eyes. Most assumed he was a retiree passing time over eggs. None knew he was Walter Thompson, the diner's true owner. For years, Walter had stayed anonymous, blending in to see the unfiltered truth. That morning, his coffee sat untouched as he watched Sarah. He'd noticed her for weeks, outworking everyone, always Greg's target. Today, her bandaged hand made every tray a struggle, her smiles masking pain. At the next booth, two young men whispered loudly enough for Walter to hear. "That manager's got it in for her." "Yeah, the others slack off, but he only picks on her." Walter's jaw clenched. He'd run businesses long enough to spot cruelty and bias. Greg sauntered by, chuckling at his phone, ignoring Sarah's plea for help with a heavy dish stack. "Use both hands." "Oh, wait, you can't," he mocked, his laugh grating. Walter stayed still, but anger simmered within. Later, as Sarah wiped counters, Walter saw her wince when her wrist bent too far. He noticed her avoidance of Greg, like someone who'd learned proximity meant danger. Something was off. During a lull, Walter asked for the manager. Greg swaggered over, expecting a trivial complaint. Coffee too cold, he smirked. Walter shook his head. That waitress, she's hurt. Why is she on the floor? Greg's grin flickered. Her? She's clumsy, always messing up. Got a stack of reports on her, but she begged to stay. I'm generous like that. Walter nodded, but Greg's words rang hollow. Generous? No. He'd seen Greg's sneers, the customers' whispers, Sarah's grit. That night, Walter lingered in his booth, coffee cold, watching Sarah clean tables with her good hand, her faint smile hiding exhaustion. If Greg pinned her as the problem, Walter would dig deeper. And if his suspicions were right, someone would pay for underestimating both Sarah and him. The next day, Walter returned. Same booth, same coffee, but his eyes tracked Greg. Greg worked the room, joking with customers, but his face soured when Sarah passed. He pounced on her every move, snapping at slow pours, smirking at extra wipes. When she dropped a fork, he made a show of it. See what I deal with? Always careless. Customers laughed uneasily. Sarah's cheeks burned as she retrieved it with a trembling hand. Walter's certainty grew. Greg was framing her. That afternoon, Walter slipped into the back office, pretending to seek the restroom. The desk was a mess of papers, including a stack of misconduct forms, all naming Sarah for minor infractions. Spilled drinks, forgotten orders, poor attitude. Walter, a regular for months, had never seen her falter. Then he found misaligned cash register tallies, weekly shortages, unreported. His gut sank. Greg wasn't just cruel, he was a thief. That night, as the diner emptied, Walter lingered. Greg's voice drifted from the cracked office door. Another $5,000, easy, he bragged. When they notice, that waitress takes the fall. She's got the most write-ups. No one will believe her. A friend laughed. What if she talks? Greg's tone chilled. She won't. Her hand's a reminder who's boss. Walter's fists tightened, his breath heavy. This was theft, abuse, deliberate and vicious. He thought of Sarah's forced smiles, and resolve hardened within him. The conversation ended with laughter. Walter slipped out into the night, the air sharp against his face. His old military instincts stirred. Injustice in his own diner was intolerable. The truth was clear, and tomorrow he'd act. The next morning, the diner buzzed as usual, coffee brewing, forks clinking. Sarah navigated tables, her bandaged hands stiff. To most, she was just a worker enduring pain. To Walter, she carried more than trays. Today was different. He entered, boots steady, denim jacket on, but his posture signaled purpose. He wasn't a customer today, he was the owner. Greg laughed by the counter, joking with waitresses who rolled their eyes behind him. Seeing Walter, his grin wavered. Back for eggs. Walter ignored him, stepping to the diner's center and tapping his spoon against his cup. The soft ring silenced the room. Conversations paused. Sarah froze. Morning, everyone, Walter said, voice steady. It's time you know who I am. Greg laughed nervously. What? Writing a novel? Walter's eyes pinned him. No, I own this diner. Silence gripped the room. A fork clattered. Sarah's eyes widened. Greg's laugh faltered, his face paling. You're joking. Walter placed a folder on the counter, misconduct reports, financial logs, register copies. I've seen enough, Greg. Your false reports on Sarah, the cash you stole, and what you did to her hand. Gasps spread. Customers turned. The women from table 3 whispered. I knew he was dirty. Greg stammered. This is ridiculous. You can't prove, but officers entered, summoned by Walter that morning. Greg's bravado crumbled as cuffs clicked on. The diner buzzed with murmurs as Greg was let out, his protests lost in the clink of chains. Sarah stood still, hand to her chest, free from Greg's shadow. Walter turned to her, voice gentle. You've carried this place. Despite lies, you kept it going. You're not just a waitress, you're floor's supervisor now. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes, her bandaged hand trembling as she stifled a sob. Customers clapped, some softly, some loudly. For the first time, Sarah stood tall, seen not as a victim but as the pillar she was. Outside, Greg's shouts faded with the police car. Inside, the diner smelled of coffee and grease, but the air felt lighter. Walter sat in his booth, coffee in hand, smiling. Justice had prevailed. Never underestimate those who persist despite attempts to break them. Sarah's story shows truth triumphs, and justice finds the guilty. If stories like this matter to you, hit subscribe, share this with someone who needs it, and comment below. Your voice counts.